my name is Peter Cinnamon and you're very welcome to Kicking Match. We are an Irish League podcast and we are coming at you twice this week. That's right, sound that bonus episode klaxon as we're giving you the most up-to-date reaction and review from all the games that went down on Easter Tuesday as well as at BelClassico on Wednesday. And you know, like we always do, we're going to give you a preview of the games that are coming up this weekend. So sit back, relax, as we're going to get into it all right now. Time is of the essence, so we may as well peel back off the wrapper of this episode and start chatting to our guests this week. They have been here before. They are from the Around the Grounds NI. A big welcome back to the podcast, Joe McCallion and Ross Welsh.
Evening.
Are we dried off after last night's game?
Drying out, but still freezing cold, that's for sure.
I'm still dripping a wee bit here.
Well, we will let everybody peek behind the scenes. We are currently, as we record this, living in a world where Glentoran and Linfield have yet to play each other, and we don't know what world we'll be living in when this podcast goes live in your ears. So what we're going to do is we're going to review all the games that happened on Easter Tuesday, and in the middle, we will splice in a reaction. Yes, in two parts, this will be in one big glorious sandwich for you. We're going to fire that right in the middle. But right now, Monday on the pod, we spent a lot of time talking about Larne at the start. And no doubt we will spend a lot of time doing it on this podcast. Let's start at the bottom. Let's start at the game where all three of us were at. We went down to a soggy Shamrock Park for a huge game at the bottom for Portadown. They simply needed a win to try and help them believe that there's a chance that they could pull this around. It wasn't meant to be. It was Newry who were jubilant, celebrating with their fans at Shamrock Park. It's all looking a bit dark and a bit grim for Portadown fans, but they do have a lifeline, a slim one. They've got 5 points across 3 games to try and pull back against Dungannon, but let's talk about the game. The way I described it on the radio was that when you look back at it, Portadown never really looked like scoring, but you have to look at that first half for them. A half which they had a majority of the ball, a half where they created the most amount of chances. But I don't think I'm being cruel here in saying they never really crafted anything clear cut.
Yeah, I have to agree. You can have all the ball that you want if you're not going to have. I read somewhere there was no shot on target across the whole 90 minutes. I don't know if that's true or not, but you got to have that killer instinct, especially when they're down the bottom. You got to get the goals and you got to go ahead and stay ahead.
I would almost argue the shot that led to Newry's goal was not going on target either. That's another moment that Portadown fans will look back at in horror, but they come into the game without Paul McElroy, and people talk up how much strikers have been a problem for Portadown, but when you also look at the stats and at the table, conceding goals has been another big issue. And if we can circle back to that Newry goal, it comes from loose tackling, poor marking. Healy's able to run on and do a bit of a weak enough shot that Jethron Barr then dives and pushes into the path of an on-rushing, non-track James Teelan. And really from there, Portadown were clearly on the back foot. They needed to push on. They needed to try and get a goal. And with their reinforcements in January, they've brought in Alan O'Sullivan, who's been a big player, particularly coming off the bench. Car Frail's a real engine for them up top. But particularly in the second half, they just didn't have the energy. They didn't have the zeal to pull it back. And it felt as the second half went on, the chance of Portadown getting anything seemed to whimper away as well.
There's a real feel around the ground. You know, when it got to about 60th minute, it almost felt like everyone in there had almost accepted defeat in a way. We were, he said to us, he near enough predicted, he said every time the defence get the ball, they carry it out a bit and then they look for a corner flag. The first half, it wasn't happening that much, but at about the 60th minute on, every single time it was a long ball over the top and it didn't work, not once.
I was very proud of myself when I described it as one note, and that note was Route 1. This has worked, though, for Portadown. That worked for them when they were able to win 4-3 against Newry. But let's give Newry some credit here as well. They could feel Portadown and particularly Dungannon breathing down their neck. And we almost go to Good Friday where they have this awful string of results in 2023. They go 1-0 ahead early. They lose Ram McGivern, but it doesn't faze them. They go up and get the second goal and they hold on and hold on. And you would think losing a really experienced player like Ram McGivern, being without a hugely critical player like John McGovern, going down the Shamrock Park, they've got a lot to do here. But for the second game in a row, they stood resolute. They dealt with every one of these long balls. They didn't particularly have a lot of creativity and quality going forward, but they were able to do the job. And with that win, it now sets up Newry as being guaranteed to not be getting automatic relegation. 11th is as worse it will go. You have to admit, bar this big, frustrating and poor patch they've had, congratulations to them. Congratulations to Darren Mullen. They've been able to pull themselves out of a hole. Clearly, this must have been right in the whiteboard. This is what we want to achieve at the start of the season. And now, at worst, it's going to be a playoff. But the way they're playing, it looks as though they're going to get more points. And it looks as though they might just be safe already. It's in their hands, for sure.
I think so. I thought they were really in a bad place, but then to go to Cardiff and win and Portadown, I'm sure they'd have looked at that and thought that's a tricky game going away to Shamrock Park. 6 points, that's brilliant. They don't need to find that much more many points. If it comes to it, they could be playing an already safe Dungannon themselves on the last day. So, you can maybe pencil in at least one there. Ballymena haven't looked great. So, you're wrapping up that one. They've come into a lovely run at the nice time. And I think they will finish 10th now. Promoted teams coming into this league, you're probably thinking, if we can finish 11th, happy days, we'll fancy ourselves against the championship team. But to finish 10th, it's a brilliant turnaround for them. It shows the difference a few weeks can make in this league.
And just while we talk about that, you on your channel, the Around the Grounds NI channel, you guys put up some highlights and videos of a trip one of your team took down to Loughgall to see what seemed to be the champions-elect in Loughgall absolutely destroy Ards. They seem destined, all bar the popping of champagne, of coming up into the top league. Very briefly, how do they look set from you seeing a lot of the teams in this league? How do you think they'll fit in this league next season, potentially?
It's hard to tell with the teams coming up. They were playing a very poor Ards that day. It was tough to get a good gauge of them. I mean, if you look at that video, there isn't a single Ards highlight in there. They were never really tested, which, I mean, says quite a bit. It's very rare that happens. But I think, as you say, they're more than likely are going to come up. But I wonder if it is nerve setting in a wee tiny bit.
We will somewhat leave this whole relegation talk for now, but with Newry now on 29 points, Dungannon, they're on 24, Portadown still remain on 19. They've got 3 games to pull back that 5 points, as I said. Even to have this conversation, you're going to have to assume that they're going to go to Stangmore Park and get the 3 themselves to make that 3 down to 2. They're relying on other teams. That's clear. And perhaps there is going to be one last twist in the tail. But you must say, at the final whistle, I kind of felt there was a general acceptance, an understanding. I don't think there'll be a lot of kicking and screaming from Portadown fans if it does end up that they finish 12th and are relegated. But to have a bit of positivity for them, give them a bit of hope. They're not out of it yet, but they are behind the 8 ball for sure.
It's the hope that kills you. If they can snatch something against Carrick on Saturday, then you have to say it really, really is back on. But they had a mountain to climb as it was. They were already dependent on other teams, so nothing's changed in terms of catching Dungannon. They lost as well. The gap's still the same. You could see them bouncing straight back up if Niall Curry stays. He's got a good group together now. It was a sorry sight before Christmas, obviously, but it's really turned around. They just left themselves too much to do, I think.
I think you are right in terms of, there was a feeling that the send-off that the Portadown players and Niall Curry both got, it felt like it was the last day of the season. It felt like that was the last game. and it was an applause is the left of you tried your best, lads, but I think that is it.
One of the difference I thought between the two teams, and I'm not here to single anybody out, that broadly, as much as that fixture had produced incredible games, that 4-3, full of drama, really, really entertaining, that was only a 1-0 game, but yes, it's near the end of the season, bodies are tiring. It was clear to me a distinct lack of quality. You could see the difference between those two teams and the teams above them, and it was just the final ball, it was the movement in the box, it was creating something from a set piece. The difference I'd say between Newry and Portadown, because there was commitment, there was fight, there was a couple of full body tackles going in. That's a Newry team who have been working together, building themselves up, and look, they've had a lot of players, but you could see this connection that they had, and the ability to dig in and the endeavour. And sometimes the moments where Portadown have let themselves down, it has been perhaps a communication issue. It's been that last ball missing because they aren't completely in sync. If you're Portadown fans and you're probably looking at Newry because they're going to have to reset if they are to be relegated, you're going to put Newry on the board and go, we're going to build this season, try and get ourselves back up. But it's also about creating a core team and a team that know each other. How many of those players were brought in January? Add in the ones that were thrown together in the summer. This has been a massively unsettled team for a number of years, and I'm sure some Portadown fans could maybe take some solace from the idea of if they had been relegated last season, would they be already sitting there at the top of the table ready to go again? Is there a case of, you don't say, well, let's get relegated and start again, but perhaps it's a case of if they are relegated this season, it's a case of, right, we're just going to have to take our medicine right now and prepare ourselves to be up and going next season. And a final note on Newry, on that togetherness, that's something that's built over years, and you have to give Darren Mullen the credit because he's been able to pull it out, get the togetherness and the spirit of that team for those two games, those two results. And it looks as though Newry are safe, but a massive congratulations to them regardless.
Yeah, definitely. Darren's had that group together a good while now, and at the start of the season, Paul Doon was trying to put his mark on this sports team, and then we've had that process again where Niall Curry's now trying to put his stamp on the team. So I echo what you're saying. You don't want to get relegated, but talk about a group together, get everyone on the same page, and then you'd like to think if the Ports do get relegated and then do come back up, build from there and sort of get back in that top six like the Ports of old.
And we now know nobody bar the people that are in the far future are living in a world where Larne are currently champions of the 2022-2023 Nifl Premiership. Why? Because Linfield did not lose. But I'm sure it must have felt like a loss with that last minute goal from who else but the current blue killer Bobby Burns. Overall, do you feel as though that's a fair result? I guess the result's kind of irrelevant in the grand scheme of things, but talking about the game as it was at Windsor Park, once again, Linfield drawing a big game. At least it wasn't 0-0 this time. When you look at all this at the end of the season, it's nights like this, it's games like this. This is why there is unlikely to be blue and white ribbons around the Gibson Cup this year.
Yeah, story of our season. I'm still very raw from that late equaliser. I think I don't know. It's a tough one to say who deserved it. I think Linfield could have won it in the first 5 minutes alone with a load of chances, but then I don't think anybody really did anything for the next 83 minutes, and then all of a sudden Glentoran came to life for trying to get the point and they got it. So fair play to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think I turned to Ross at about the 60th, 70th minute and went, what has actually happened in this game? It's kind of been a bit of nothing. And then suddenly at the 80th minute, Glentoran decided to actually start playing football, and they had so many chances in that last 10 minutes, you just knew a goal was going to come.
Glentoran just seemed to have a bit more energy and purpose about them. They look like the team that were chasing after trying to get a result, and clearly when Linfield and Glentoran, there was a lot of pride on the line. Very rarely did I look at Linfield and think they are chomping at the bit to try and get the goal, to try and get the result, to make sure that they are not giving Larne an easy ride. And this result now gives that to Larne. It's in their hands clearly, but All they need is to not to lose, and the title will be theirs. I know you've probably felt as though this has been a reality for a number of weeks, Ross, but does it really feel real now that this is not going to be Linfield's year?
Yeah, I think that's it. I was pretty close to that point on Friday after Crusaders. We just looked really toothless, and then again tonight it was really poor in parts, and I think any last tiny flicker of belief has gone out now for the title charge. And well done to Larne. They've flown under the radar all year. They went about their business and very much deserving winners, I think.
We'll get into the whole how did Larne win the title, I'm sure, numerous times over the next few weeks. But when you really get down to it from this broad sense, on a far view, Larne overall has been more consistent. They've been able to weather their storms, and you often talk about teams and players getting through the gears. As much as Larne, I've never felt as though they've been absolute foot to the pedal rampaging teams, bar the odd game where they've trounced teams at the bottom of the league. You've never felt as though Linfield were ever at a canter at any point this season. It never felt as though they had found their rhythm, they found their system, they found their way of play. They clearly were lacking confidence at times, but this is a team that have been out of sorts for months now. And what's it going to... Will it require summer to sort that out? Or what will it be? Clearly there's going to be a lot of turnover at the club from players who are out of contract. But this feels now, for Linfield, this is a fulcrum season. The Linfield of 2-3 years from now, I think, will look very different to what they are now.
Definitely, and I think they have to, because I saw a tweet there. This is two of the worst Glentoran and Linfield teams that people have seen in a long time, and I have to agree that they're both not great. They're certainly not the great teams of decades past, but I think there just needs to be big change within the club, and I think the hand is going to be forced of the board because, as you say, there's so many people out of contract. There's a lot of talk about David Healy moving on. Has he taken the group as far as he can? But then you have to wonder, is there a new group coming in? So could he maybe do a little bit more of that? But yeah, this year, once we got into the latter stage of European qualification, it looked like it could be a big year to get to the group stage, really get the European money coming in and push on domestically. But obviously just hasn't turned out that way, and I guess the post-mortem sort of has to start now.
It will definitely be a step back for sure for them to move forward, if they can move forward. Do you think there is a philosophy change set to come to Linfield? You have a brand new GM that was installed halfway through the season. Linfield clearly are a team that have significant resources, but in recent times we haven't seen them, what people would say, splash the cash like perhaps definitely a Larne have, Glentoran have, maybe even Crusaders have to a certain extent. I'm not saying this one player has decided the league, but I keep going back, particularly after last night, and think, who's the man leading the charge? Who is the man that's a clear investment for the future for his club, albeit an asset or someone that's delivering now? I don't know how far down the road they are, or were they really in the last those negotiations for him. But if Lee Bonus was sitting this season in a blue shirt, I think we would see a very different season and a potentially a very different future for Linfield. But spending 100 grand never felt like that was or has been in, I guess, recent Linfield DNA, and perhaps seeing Larne investing in players and them coming to the fore and now being assets that can move on in the way they've done with Kofi Balmer, like Linfield have as well in regards to Trey Hume. Perhaps do they have to look at themselves, or Linfield going to look at the league and go, we need to start investing to start getting dividends, be it getting into later stage qualifications, winning the league, and really growing this club further?
Yeah, I think, as you say, this new GM coming in, hopefully that sparks a little change, but we sort of have to spend a bit of money. Like, we're going to have to in the summer. It's plain to see that things haven't went right this season, and you could pick out a number of areas. Jamie Mulgrew's not getting any younger. There hasn't really been that out-and-out goal scorer for a while. Retaining's chipped in, but more against the smaller teams. There's a lot of holes needing plugged in that Linfield team, and I don't know if the board understand it. And £100,000 layout on bonus, if he scores the goal that gets you through to the group stages of the Europa League, that's paying off tenfold straight away. So I think you just have to speculate to accumulate sometimes.
That's what I'm hearing from a lot of other Linfield fans. Perhaps the difference between getting to start off with the Champions League qualification and then going through the rounds, the difference between that and what if Linfield do, and that's still up in the air, get Europe, that could be 100, 200,000 pounds difference alone. And even when you have a player like Bonus, he looks to be an asset that could be sold for even more. And I've seen Linfield, and it's always a roll of the dice. For every player that comes back from England that does well, I'm often thinking of the likes of Ben Kennedy and the Hill brothers. There's plenty that haven't worked out, and I think for Linfield, there's been quite a few of them, particularly this season, who just hasn't really worked out. I don't want to single them out, but we all know the players that have come from England or Scotland and then never really make an impact on it. And it'll be interesting this summer. Do they go, right, if we want to reset ourselves and potentially get a lot of bodies in, and they've got a great youth system of players who could step up, but to settle themselves, could it be that they're going to return to the Irish League of days gone past? I'm thinking of the David Jeffrey era when they're bringing in the best players in the league below them. Are they going to change that up? And I'm talking about players probably like Fitzpatrick. Do they want to go full time, or other players like that? Or are they going to continue with this idea of maybe looking to the League of Ireland, taking on some players there, or just hoping that their scouting will come good and bringing over these players from England and Scotland again?
Yeah, it's a difficult one because they have to decide first and foremost, do we want to try to patch this up for a year and then maybe come second or third, whatever it is, get another domestic trophy, but once again don't win the league? Or do we want to go, say, like sort of in American sports, like a full rebuild, take an off year and really just start from scratch, say this year's a fallow year and we'll go again full tilt next year? But I don't know if I would accept that, and I don't know if other Linfield fans would accept that, just to have a year totally off and hope you fluke your way through the playoffs. I don't think that flies at Windsor.
I'll leave the sticking a pin in the board and trying to build this new Linfield team for later on in the season. Come on, guys, I need content for the summer. But going to you, Ross, looking at this from a Cliftonville point of view, it's only 3 points between you and Linfield right now. Linfield have turned up to this split and have drawn the games as we expected. Are they going to bounce back, particularly with a game against Larne on the way? And it does leave the door open now for a Crusaders or Cliftonville to try and stake their claim, or even Glentoran, albeit that's a bigger swing, to step in and maybe steal your lunch. And we could see something which I don't think we've seen before, and Linfield having to go through the playoff to try and get some sort of European football this season.
We kind of need to look at that now. I mean, I know they haven't officially yet, but Larne have won the league. I think we kind of need to look now and go, there's only, 3 games left. Let's really go for it. We've obviously been poor, and like I said earlier, I think confidence is low. Needs to just be a wipe of everything that's happened so far and just go, let's just go for it. Let's get that second spot. Because as you say, you don't know how much that's going to rock Linfield tonight, and there's not much in it, and there's teams behind us that are coming up quick. So it's funny, the league is over, but there's still a lot to play for a lot of those teams up in the top.
Wow, what a result that was for either Linfield, Glentoran, or maybe it was a brilliant result for Larne. They could be sitting as champions right now, or what they're sitting as right now in our reality, champions elect. Larne on this post-split run feels Thanos-esque. They've just come in and they're going to come in and they're just going to collect victories from every other team as they ride towards the Gibson Cup. The same way where we're saying it's not over for Portadown, it just feels it. It feels like the reverse at the top of the table. The other side of the story is Cliftonville and their slow decline to end the season. They were supposed to be the chosen ones that were going to keep up the energy, keep up the results, but unfortunately They haven't been able to do it. They suffer another defeat at Solitude after the ones against Dungannon early in the season. And once again, it feels like on a grim, muggy, wet night up there in North Belfast, some lapse in concentration and poor defending gives Newry the inch, the yard to punish and to ride back to Inver with the 3 points they very much wanted and needed.
Yeah, we can't skip over this one by any chance, can we? I had a good feeling and stuff. And what I said that day, it was just before we played Dungannon. We can't do what we did last time at Solitude. We're Dungannon this again. And that is exactly what's happened. And since then, as you say, it's just a slow decline. Like, I mean, I think we have 1 point in 3 home games. And
Joe, for people who don't know, you are a Red man. What do you think it has been? Obviously, the big glorious run of Sean Moore has started to whimper down, which should be expected as a player who is a teenager. But what has it been? Has it just been the energy levels? Has it been a confidence thing? Has it been perhaps other players have begun to be able to maneuver around how Cliftonville's set up? Is there a hypothesis of why Cliftonville aren't sitting top of the league right now?
are dependent on one thing. Almost everything you listed there, it feels like it plays a part into it. It does feel like there's been a loss of almost hope and confidence in that team. Another thing to sort of point out is last year there wasn't too many changes in the squad in terms of like the back four was always the same, but now it feels like every week there's a new player in that back four, and it's tough to have a good, strong defense if it's changing all the time. But it's just hard to say this is the one thing that went wrong.
I talked on the Monday podcast a bit about just how you compare Larne's defensive record based on the amount of goals conceded, and Cliftonville. I believe Cliftonville have conceded the most amount of goals in the top 6. What is it? Is it just the style of play when you're flooding the heels and everybody forward? You're going to get caught the odd time, but hey, we will outscore you is the plan? Or is it like we saw on Tuesday night when you're swapping sometimes between 4 at the back and 3 at the back, or just as odd mistakes? That's what's punishing you. Is there something deeper to this?
Going to get hit on the counter quite a bit, and you probably are going to concede more than usual. However, there is also a lot more mistakes coming through. I mean, as you said earlier, you don't want to, point anyone out, but I think both goals last night came from a ball over the top, and Casey not quite dealing with it as well as he should have. Not that it's his fault, obviously, but it's mistakes like that. You don't want to be getting beat if you're looking to win the league. You can't be getting beat with the ball over the top. It's poor.
What do you think now going into the summer? Because it looks as though, well, the league's out pretty much, and you now also are staring down this potential of a European playoff, which again could significantly impact how you go into the summer if it's not to go your way. You talked about how settled the team were it's been slightly frayed at the edges, and maybe that's a part of it. But do you see big overhauls at any spots in the team, or what would you look to try and change it so this doesn't happen next season?
We haven't dealt with injuries too well in terms of our depth. We're not really. There's no top quality the same way there is with our first team as we're diving in there. I think that's probably what we'll look to this summer.
Our final game in the top 6 that we have not talked about was a 3-1 victory for Crusaders over Coleraine. Crusaders are still, they're probably going to be big Glentoran fans, or would have been big Glentoran fans with that game, because they are still actually somewhat in with a shout for second, to pretty much punch in a second go at this ticket to get themselves into Europe. And for them, it's clear, we talked about it on Monday on the pod, where so many of these results against the teams in the bottom 6 is why they're not higher in the league. Away form as well is why they're not higher in the league. But Philip Laurie with 20 goals, give him his props. Huge player. This will be a conversation as the weeks go on in this podcast, but clearly if you were to put down a best starting 11 from this season, Philip Laurie's in it. What a great season he's had.
Oh, 100%. Like at one point, it felt like he was scoring twice a game. Like I believe he was top of the scoring charts a decent chunk into the season. And it's not just him, it's everyone around him. I didn't realize quite close Crusaders were to up into that other automatic European place. And, you know, the great result against the Blues on Friday there, they came with a plan, they executed it well, and it's a classic Baxter performance. And maybe people don't like, but I'm sure all the Crusaders fans did. And I think you're right. There will be, well, I don't actually know how to be supporting tonight. Maybe Glens, but then that puts them above them. I think they'll win the cup anyway, so it maybe won't matter. But yeah, they're right up there amongst it, which I didn't quite realize. So that's just another thing to worry about.
Forsyth has been within the goals. He knocked in a penalty. He got two there on Tuesday. And you'd think what this Crusaders team could be if they had a goal scorer in this team up top and a player that they were linked to the entirety of January, and they could be in for him again, particularly if they get this European pot of money, is Matthew Fitzpatrick, knocking them in for fun for a Glenavon team who are on brilliant run right now. Where are all those Hamilton out crew? I thought this team was a disaster, destined for relegation, if not this season, next season. That's a bit hyperbolistic, but hey. But Gary is sitting there smug as ever. He's been able to beat Ballymena twice in the space of a week or so. They've got a wee bit of business to do to lock in 7th place, but they're sitting very, very happy. When you've got a player like Fitzpatrick who is in the right place, right time. He's here, he's there, he's everywhere. I don't know if there's space for him in the team of the season, but Matt Fitzpatrick's been key for Glenavon.
If they do get into that playoff, the record against the top 6 has been brilliant this year. So cup ties, it's anyone's game. If they get into Europe, why would he not stay?
Ballymena, I've somewhat been very harsh on them. I feel like if you want to get an insight into how this Ballymena team are feeling, jump on the Ballymena YouTube page and just watch every post-match from David Jeffrey. It just looks as though he can't believe what he's seen. He feels as though they're working hard, and he talked in one of the more recent games about how many 1-0 losses they've faced. And perhaps I've been a wee bit harsh on just how poorly the results have been. Ballymena fans are probably saying, you cannot be harsh enough. This has been such a tough 2023 for them. But that game against Glenavon actually proves they're still fighting. And going back to the Portadown perspective again, they'll hope that they'll still be up and fighting to try and get a result against Dungannon. But they're not completely. They've got the cup final. They've got an eye on it. But they're putting a shift in still.
From the highlights, it looked like the second goal came late on, so I don't know how much that scoreline flatters them a wee bit, but losses or something in a row, it seems like it just almost free fall. It's almost good for them that we are at the end of the season. We're in the split.
I kind of felt that they'd already saved themselves in January, but you must say if they hadn't built up the amount of points that they got earlier in the season, you'd think you could be in trouble and this could be difficult now going forward for them. But they are safe. But the other flip of that is that they're not anywhere near 7th. Between now and the end of the season, we'll just say they've got all eyes in the cup final. But they are, like many teams, I think looking ahead to next season, it will feel like a very different league, or it could potentially be a very different league. I talked about how much I felt Ballymena could do wonders this season. I perhaps really underestimated how key the likes of Leroy Miller and Winchester were to that team. But now a lot of teams have got a big summer ahead of them. Ballymena are one of them, and it'll go from here to the Dungannon against Carrick game. Dungannon got the results in little spurts here or there, and they're going to have to try and get a result between now and the end of the season to make sure that they're not playing championship football. They simply cannot afford to trudge on and not get a win. Where is it going to come from? Newry was able to get a win against Carrick. Dungannon go to Carrick, and they're able to respond to that result, get a 2-0 against Dungannon, and goals have been Dungannon's problem. It really, really has. The stats say that they've had a number of people rotate up top, and they're the lowest scorers in the league. They concede absolutely loads, and when the pressure is on, it doesn't give you the same poise and conviction to time your run or deal with that ball or not snap at a chance. So this result is in the bag, but do you feel as though Dungannon have a chance to get points or win out of these games somewhere?
I think they can beat Ballymena just off Ballymena's rotten form at the minute. I think it could be that they're playing against a team that are already down, so you have to hope they put the nail in the coffin there. And then talk about a massive game that could turn into in the last day of the season when they host Newry. The difference between just staying up and having to go through that playoff, because Warrenpoint Town, that's not a game to be sniffed at. So you might find that Dean Shields can get them going for that game at least, and then leapfrog Newry in the 10th spot.
How they feel, because they've got so many players that you feel have a bit of spark to them. The Reece Campbell, I really like how Mark Walsh has been for them, but between Jordan Jenkins and Joe McCready and other players that play it up top as the lowest scorers in the division, that is why they're at the bottom. They concede absolutely bucket loads as well. Since January, Portadown had Alan O'Sullivan, Carfriel, and Paul McElroy, and it has given them goals to give them a chance. Now, if there was somehow to be a flip, you would have to say it's because of the goals from Paul McElroy and others. So the one thing that'll be top of their list will absolutely be a striker this summer. Where they come from, I don't know. I feel like that Adam Sally, where he goes next season, where there's so many teams dying out for striking talent, and with how many he's scored in the championship, yes, he's never been able to take that step up to the Premier League and bang in over 10 goals or anything like that, but I feels like he's going to be a wanted man come the summer if he already hasn't committed his future somewhere already. Now that we know how the games all went, we can look ahead to what is going down this weekend, and we will start on Friday, and it could be a passing of the torch from Belfast to the regions, let's just say. Larne could become the first team in 22 years to win the title. That's not from Belfast. Love this stat. Last team to have done it, fellas, was
Torch.
That was in 2002. Oh, it's just 21, 22 years, whatever. And I heard this and I thought it was incredible. The last team to win it that wasn't Portadown from the regions.
Stumped. No, give me thinking time.
If it helps, it's like an incredible stat. It's something like 70s or 60s. The last time a non-Belfast team that wasn't Portadown that won it. It's incredible.
Is it like a trick question? It's like Derry City?
No, it's not. But you tried. It was Coleraine. So
easy.
I'm sure I got that absolutely wrong, but last team to have won the league outside of Belfast that wasn't Portadown was Coleraine. Anyway, Larne could do it. It could be one of many. Everyone's enjoying this story, but I often think what happens when success breeds more success, and all of a sudden they are, like I said, potentially rampaging to the league each year. I still think Seaview factor is still a Seaview factor, and I do oddly favour it to be a draw, which would still give Larne the title in this scenario. But is there a chance with Crusaders really pushing to try and sneak second and give them the best chance for Europe, that they could say, this is our house, you're not going to come here and have a party?
It's on if they want to do it. They're more than capable at home this year. We've seen that. I still do fancy Larne to get the point that they need. I could see a draw myself. I think that'll be a nice away day for those Larne fans, seeing their team win the league for the first time.
Just the great thing about the split as well, like I said earlier, in other leagues you would get teams at this point, someone's already won the league, you're not really playing for anything, but there's still everything to play for Crusaders to try to get as high as possible. It's brilliant.
We then have what could be ultimately a pity party when Linfield take on Coleraine. I often look at Ballymena against Glenavon as like one of my favourite games, one of my favourite pairings in the league, but Linfield against Coleraine has never really, in recent times, spurred me with much enthusiasm based on what I've seen on the pitch.
Yeah, it feels like as a Linfield fan, that's sort of your comfortable win out of that big six, as it's been the case over the last few months. We've beat them a few times, but that Linfield performance tonight was not good, and Coleraine have been trying their best to disrupt things, and they're doing that role well. So I would expect a Linfield win, but I wouldn't be too shocked if Coleraine were managing to snatch something, especially up there on the plastic pitch.
Look, Linfield have not been playing on a particularly great service there at Windsor, but overall, how have Linfield dealt with those plastic pitches? Most of the plastic pitches are top six teams, Larne and Crusaders and Cliftonville, and they haven't particularly done great against them. And they haven't got massive results up at the showgrounds since then. Have I unlocked the code? Do Linfield just not play well on carpets and that's it?
That could well be it. I can remember one win away to Larne, and that was from a penalty a couple of years ago. I mean, Seaview's just a tough place to go at the best of times. Cliftonville the same. We were right against Dungannon the other week, actually, now I think about it. But
this season, everybody's all right against Dungannon. Like, come on.
That could well be it. I'll take any answer to what's going on here, but yeah, it's a real problem, especially if the league's going that way. You know, you can't just have the excuse, oh, it's a plastic pitch. And I believe Linfield actually train on a plastic pitch at Midgley Park out the back of Windsor. So in theory, it really shouldn't be an issue. But hey, look, maybe it's just that other teams are better than us this year.
Well, that's for you to say, and not for me. Ross, this should be a guaranteed 3 points, should it not? Cliftonville going to Glentoran, and you have their number and then some this year.
Yeah, well, let's hope so. But I mean, the way things have been going, there really does need to be a turnaround. And those Glentoran fans tonight, at the end, they were just bouncing. So they'll probably go into that game with actually quite a bit of confidence, to be honest.
They still have plenty to fight for, but again, it's just matchups can be difficult. Looking at it, for me, you're going to the Oval. I just think that pitch would actually suit Cliftonville a lot. And I know you got that 1-0 win earlier on in the season, but Glentoran had a bit of energy, had a bit of vigor when they were able to string balls together. So it could be a tight one. Again, a draw suits nobody, so you'd like to think that both teams will give it a go and we'll get something entertaining from that. We go to Ballymena. Dungannon go up there. We talked about how terrible their form has been. If we're doing bottom half of Section B against top half of Section B, Portadown have already got a result against Ballymena. Dungannon will look to match that, particularly with Portadown hosting Carrick and Dungannon getting nothing against Carrick. Really, for when it comes to the bottom of the table, that's the area that we're looking at. One tiny thing that I was looking at earlier is that I think if Ballymena lose out for the rest of the season and somehow Dungannon Swifts can win out and Newry keep getting results, Ballymena are not guaranteed not finishing 11th. They could be caught by Newry, and potentially will be caught by Newry to finish 10th.
I would fancy Newry to catch them. I just think Ballymena are in such a terrible run of form, bar the cup semi-final win, and Newry seem to be coming into some sort of form, so I wouldn't put it past that. I think Dungannon would be a step too far for them to overturn that deficit. But you know, if Dungannon beat them, then why not? Ballymena start looking over their shoulders. That hasn't really been talked about at all. But if whispers start going around about that, then you never know. It's tough to see the mental strength of that Ballymena team.
If Dungannon do win that's the one thing we're hanging on to at the bottom of the league for the next kind of storyline and drama. And at this stage of the season, and the fact that one team will definitely go down and two could go down, you'd have to say, you know, if you're talking to a Portadown fan who feels frustrated, if you can't beat teams like Newry, then you are going to go down. And I think for Dungannon, as much as they have the leeway to lose against Ballymena in the shape that they're in, Portadown were able to beat them. Everybody seems to be able to beat them in the year 2023. You are going away, but when the going gets tough, if you can't beat Ballymena, then you are going to put yourself in trouble. And The problem for Dungannon is that they don't have what other teams around them have, and that is more goal threats. This screams 0-0, but we've saw that Ballymena can knock it in every once in a while if it's through a set piece or something. So it's for Dungannon to sit tight and try and catch them some way, somehow, but I would lean towards a 0-0. A game I think is going to be very, very entertaining, and I'm going to be heading down to myself. I'm going to see Newry for the second time in a week. Newry hosts Glenavon, and all of a sudden everything's rosy in the world of Newry City down in South Down direction. And this has been a strange fixture this year where Newry have got the best of Glenavon at Morinview. Glenavon were able to get a very turgid win, let's just say, against Newry, very much in due to a goalkeeping error. They came out with 3 points. Glenavon don't want to let Carrick have any sort of way to catch them and claw back, but I don't know what way this will go, but I feel as though this should be end-to-end and quite entertaining.
Yeah, I think you're probably right there. I mean, there is a bit of a feeling that Glenavon has sort of secured that 7th spot, but you're all right, they haven't. They can't go out there and lapse of concentration or anything like that. I think you're right. I think it will be an entertaining game. That Newry side are probably decent bit of confidence about them. You could feel it after the Portadown game, the way they were celebrating with the fans. It felt like it was really going to lift them. And as Ross said, they were already coming into a bit of form. So I think that's a good game. Although I think Glenavon still, I'm going to say 2-1 Glenavon.
If Newry can get a draw and Dungannon lose, then Newry secure survival. So there's still plenty to play for them now, even though they do have Dungannon at the end of the season. They win. Now, if they win, Dungannon wins, different story, but Newry will think Glenavon are feeling good about themselves. They will keep fighting, because after these 2 massive wins that they have got, it would feel like a pretty big disappointment. And I think the fear would set in if all of a sudden Newry's looking at 2 games against Warren Point in the dark and potentially the cold, trying to keep your top flight status alive. So they've still got plenty to go for, even though they've secured safety from the automatic drop.
Yeah, definitely. That playoff is you never want to get involved in that. Portadown did well to come through against Anna last year. I thought Anna maybe would have got the job done, but they did well to come through it. And it's just a headache you really don't need. You're at the end of a long, hard season as it is. To then be coming up against a team that have come second in the championship, this year it's not going to be like they've just been pipped to it, so morale's low. Warren Point are comfortably second. They'll be ready for this playoff. They've nothing to fight for, really. It's just a stinking set of games to have against a high-flying team when you're struggling and have potentially been sucked into that battle later on.
Well, we talk about must-wins, and we talk about games where you really need to pull it out of the bag. Portadown hosts Carrick. It's the final game of the season at Shamrock Park, I believe. So it's the final time they can get a load of fans out to try and cheer them on. Carrick have absolutely had the runaround of Portadown in recent times, and they'll still be pushing. They've already, I think, broken for the first time the 40-point barrier in the league. They'll want to keep going on. If there's a chance they can finish 7th, I'm sure Stuart King's pushing his team to do it. If Portadown lose and results go the wrong way, it's over, and they'll be relegated on Saturday. So if that isn't motivation enough to run that extra yard, put that extra boot in to try and get the tackle, I don't know what will. But like I said, Carrick will have absolutely no mercy. Portadown will still be without Paul McElroy for the final game. I think that's been a big deal to them. Do you believe Portadown can keep things interesting for one more week?
Well, they've been up against it for a long time, and it's just a case of, go out on your sword. If you win and then other teams' results don't go your way, what can you do to a certain extent? Whereas if you lose and then continue to lose, you're kind of looking at yourself thinking we could have done a wee bit more there. So as you said, I'm sure they'll be right up for it. Niall Curry in his interview, he wasn't happy with the performance. He said it was a bit of a wasted opportunity, and I'm sure the players are feeling the same way. So all Portadown can do at this point is go out and try to win every game and set up a potentially huge game against Dungannon, and then as if a Mid-Ulster derby isn't big enough, survival on the line. You don't want to go down away to your rivals.
Here's the score. It's out of Portadown's hands to a certain extent right now, but they'll be on the app flicking, praying for a Ballymena goal, because let's talk about the permutations. If Dungannon are defeated and Portadown win, all of a sudden it is in Portadown's hands, because they're 2 points behind Dungannon and they have to go to Stagmore Park. And if they win there, it's all flipped round. So it could be a bit of a damp squib to end both at the top of the division at the bottom. But hey, maybe one of these teams will make it interesting. But guys, I really appreciate jumping on. 2 pods in a week for me. It just felt with all the games, it was good to get some instant reaction. No doubt I'll have you on again. I'm sure many people have watched the game on Wednesday between Linfield and Glentoran, but of course they can get an alternative view if they type in Around the Grounds NI into their preferred social media app.
Yep, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. Just in case you weren't bored enough the first time round, you can relive it all again.
Happy days. And how can they follow you fine individuals if they happen to have a favourite member of the Around the Grounds crew?
Well, I'm on Twitter and Instagram, Ross Welsh 8.
On Twitter and Instagram as well, Joseph McCallion 24.
Fellas, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Thank you very much for listening, and particularly if this is the second time you've decided to give Kicking Match a go this week, thank you very much. Of course, if you want to hear coverage of all the games that went down on Friday, this is the first time you listen to us, you know you can do that. We've got the episode just below this one that went through all the games on Friday as well. If you're interested in reliving some of the big moments from the season, we've been here since the very beginning. We've got all the games. I don't know if you want to go back to Boxing Day for some reason, you want to hear that whole Alberto Balde and incapacitated story, maybe you want to hear about the life and times of Mick McDermott. I had an episode about all those things. Just search down on Spotify or on Apple Music and you'll find it all. But of course, you want to keep up to date with all the comings and goings in the Irish League, you can do that, or through Kicking Match. Just go to our social media pages. It's at Kicking Match is the username across Instagram, Facebook and Twitter. If you want to make this podcast hands-free, you can do that. Just tell your smart speaker, because I know some of these do this, say, hey smart speaker, please play Kicking Match, an Irish League podcast. I'm going to say goodbye. Tally ho. Thank you very much for listening. I'll see you again next week. Cheers.